Thank you so much, guys, for being so patient and giving it a go. I hope that you really enjoyed it. Now, did you all notice how tall those arches were? For a Gothic arch, that's super tall. And the reason for it is because those arches originally are Romanesque. Romanesque is much more solid. It can have a lot more height. And as such, it just requires, a different construction there. Well, I'm just going to move in a moment to show you how Romanesque worked here. But first, I kind of wanted to show you these black lines that you see on the floor. You notice that if I focus this way, it kind of creates like a little apse sort of figure. Well, this is the structural remain of where the Church of King Alfred the Great of the New Minster during Anglo-Saxon times actually was. As you can see, it was a very, very small church. And here in the green patch that you see right in front of us, that's where King Alfred was originally buried in the 9th century. Actually 10th century, because he just dies after the 10th century starts in 901. For those of you that may be coming with me later to High Dhabi, I will show you where his final resting place was after he gets moved from here. But this is what it was. Now, the materials for this church get repurposed to build a cathedral here. And as such, the cathedral was already built in a pretty, not terribly solid foundation. As you can see, the ground caves down here. So we have kind of a few problems. Now, the other issue that we had was that stained glass window that I've just shown you from inside and out, the reason why it looks like an interesting pattern is because that got smashed by cannon fire during the English Civil War. So the only reason why we even have part of the original medieval glass is because the locals saved it after the forces of Parliament left at the risk of being shot dead. It was quite a big risk that they were taking. Well, there was another issue with the cathedral, which has to do with the lantern that you see there. The Norman tower, we normally call that a lantern tower, is completely square. If this was Gothic, it would be obviously a beautiful spire like we have in Salisbury. Well, they were so quick at building this cathedral because of the Norman conquest and the knowledge that all of the Anglo-Saxon nobility was holding here, that the first tower collapses within 20 years at the end of the 11th century. As a result, that causes a lot of structural damage in the middle of the cathedral itself. So by the 1960s, they actually realized this cathedral is about to sink. The cathedral is sinking so badly, it requires architectural work and assessments every single year. And that's the reason why the prices for admission keep on going up and up and up, because it's not an easy building to upkeep overall because of its size. We do actually have one of the largest naves in Europe. All of these lovely Gothic traceries that you hear give us that claim. But as a result, it's quite an expensive building to maintain. Most cathedrals, particularly Gothic cathedrals in the world, require so. But if you ever wonder why you need to pay to go in these spaces, it's because they often don't receive a lot of funding, at least in the UK. And like I said, from a structural perspective, most of them have serious challenges. So it's one of those things. If you can afford it and you can help them out, it's a great thing to do. Otherwise, well, eventually this heritage will have to be put in value and be salvaged in a different way, because we can't let great pieces of architecture like that be thrown into the worlds of oblivion. Right, I'm gonna give you the side view here into the most reminiscent part of the Norman church, so you will be able to see the clear transition between Norman and Gothic. Yes, Nicole, a bit like Hegel. Sometimes, I don't say this, by the way, with any intent of making people upset, so please do not take me out of context. Welcome, Donna. But sometimes we do take things for granted, whether it is Hegel or something else. I'm not pointing fingers at all, but sometimes we take things for granted and we don't realize the value that they have until we've lost them. And unfortunately, I think in our modern day society, we've gotten a bit too used to, having things there when we want them to be. I think the pandemic was also a clear indicator of that. And it's just the way our society is going. It worries me as a humanist that sometimes we behave that way, but it's, it is the unfortunate truth. I don't think that's necessarily representative of us here today, but as a collective, we people, humans, we need to really take better care of the things that matter to us, because we only have one world, we only have one humanity, one society. If we don't take care of it, well, who's gonna do it? So Anyway, well, there you go. I'm glad that you agree. Now, hopefully here, and despite the very bright sun, I'm loving it, by the way, because I was so cold this morning. Do you see how the Gothic is quite clean, linear, and tall? And here in the Romanesque, I will zoom in, we have this very sort of hard structure. The open spaces are a lot smaller. Traditionally, these Romanesque, I'll say it, windows are smaller, and that's the reason why you can see the impact that it would have caused on any mind that would try and come in here. This was imposing. This was supposed to make you feel, like God was watching, rather than God was there to help you. So that's the reason why the transition is so clear, and why it needed to happen. Well, I'm glad that you guys think so. And yes, the squirrels were so cute. I'm glad you caught them, because sometimes I see things on the camera or myself, but I'm not always sure exactly how things are coming on your end. The app can be a bit deceiving that way. Like yesterday, I was downloading a lot of the video replays, and I was like, but this day we had such great signal, and then the replay didn't show so well. Or places where I was like, I thought the signal had been terrible, and then the replay came out amazing. So I don't entirely know how it works anymore, guys. That's the honest truth. But anyway, hopefully these squirrels were quit. In hindsight, I feel, well, yeah, probably. The business model could have used some more work. But anyway, welcome, Mary and Grace. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're doing really good. Right, we're now going to go back into the high street. I would like to show you another Norman structure that was actually pretty much demolished due to urban planning in this case, not for anything sinister. One of the reasons why we have a lot of medieval architecture and then buildings that go as far back as the Middle Ages in Winchester is because it was never bombed during the Second World War. Obviously, we were not perceived as a big strategic target, so, there was that. But at the same time, Winchester had actually been given pretty much a saving grace by Adolf Hitler. And this may come as a shock to a lot of people, but Hitler actually wanted to be crowned, footed of the UK in the cathedral that I've just shown you. He thought that was a way of bringing back the Germanic peoples together because of Alfred's burial and because of William the Conqueror. And as such, he gave explicit orders not to bomb Winchester. Now, before I show you St Maurice, I just wanted to give you a quick peek. These are the public toilets of Winchester, and they've used the display here to show archaeological artifacts that they have found throughout town related to toiletries as a way of sort of, putting it all in context. I think it's quite smart and a little bit kooky, but it's really cool. All right, I think I have a couple of questions here. Let me just catch up with them very quickly, because the chat is, going a little slow. So give me one moment. Eliza, I am uploading tours to my channel indeed, and I will be uploading some to YouTube. So some are going to go straight into YouTube. Like if I don't think they were like, I don't know, if I'm not good or happy with the ultimate final result, or if I think they would be much better for an audience on YouTube, they would go straight to YouTube. Some others I'm gonna put up for a very minimal cost as a replay, like a couple of quid or something like that, just so they can be seen by as many people that didn't get the chance as possible. So that's kind of the idea. I've just heard her go, "Oh no, Jacqueline, I'm so sorry. What an interesting way of finding us in such an awkward way." Yes, a poop holder museum for sure. So my channel is Travelution. This is the same name that I use commercially. So it's Travel USION. It's the combination of the words travel and illusion. Well, this is a beautiful, still preserved in wonderful condition, Romanesque tooth decoration. This is the little triangle shape that we see here. And this is all that remains of the Church of St Maurice. And the memorial stones have been preserved here. And that's about it. We actually have a little mural just on the other side, kind of to commemorate it. But the reason why it unfortunately was put down was in 1840 for urban planning. Winchester at this moment in time is desperate for a little bit of a boost in the economy, because we had completely plateaued after the English Civil War. So unfortunately, they were trying to bring the high street to modern standards. Didn't necessarily work, but as a result, the church gets completely lost. Well, I'm going to give you a sneak peek into our flower cellars, by the way, which have gorgeous flowers in today. And this is the mural as well for St Maurice. These guys come here every single day. They're proper old school. I love them. Yes, that's the channel. Thank you so much for posting it. Don't worry, the channel is not quite in a good state just yet because I had been dedicating all of my effort to Hago because monetizing YouTube and getting YouTube to work is actually a lot more work and it requires for Google to like you essentially. But there you go. And yes, M&S, there had to be a Winchester M&S, of course. This is one of the most expensive towns in the country. So, only Winchester finest for you, darling. That's what I always say. Anyway, yes, I will be uploading someone to YouTube for sure. Right, well, we're now in the Broadway. This whole area of Winchester that you see here was only developed as if it's something short of a, remarkable feature. But it was only developed in the late 18th century, early 19th century because of this attempt to expand the high street to bring money to Winchester. Now, why are we desperate to do this in the 19th century? Well, unfortunately for us, we actually made Queen Victoria rather upset. Those of you who may be touring with me in the Great Hall tomorrow will know exactly the reason, and will see the statue of Queen Victoria that we do to try and amend this issue. But we made her very upset, and as such, we didn't actually receive any royal patronage whatsoever. It was a struggle to bring London money here for business. So we did everything we could to have that touristic reclaim or to just have any kind of input. As such, we have the expansion of the High Street and this beautiful building that I'm about to show you, which is our late Victorian Guildhall, which is an absolute marvel of late Victorian architecture, probably one of the best examples that we actually have in the country. Let me just get in the corner here so I can get you a nice postcard of it, hopefully without a car. And then I'll show you from the other side, because I think maybe in here we're a bit too much in the shade. But as you can see, it's a huge building. It takes the majority of this part of town. Welcome, Manuela. Hi, Susan. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. And hi, Jacqueline. I've only just seen, for some reason, the chat is being a bit delayed. So sometimes I only see you guys joining a little later. So anyway, hope you're doing good. Well, all of the shields that you see here on the right-hand side are, by the way, the shields of the guilds. The different medieval trades that evolve into specific craft institutions that were actually in charge of the cities during the vast majority of the late Middle Ages and modern times. Obviously, all of that later on gets replaced by the city council and that type of authority to centralize the actual administration of the city. The general shape of this, though, is an absolute amazing work of not just late Victorian architecture, but medievalism overall. And I'll explain what I mean in a moment. I'm just trying to cross. So I'm just going to let these cars go. This is quite a busy part of the city because the bus station is literally just down the road. I don't know who decided to make this urban planning, but it wasn't very well thought out. Thank you so much, Lynn. It's very kind, and welcome, Petra. And yes, they are technically two continuous buildings, but built under the same license for the Guildhall. Welcome, Dennis. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. Right, I'm just gonna get us up to the top of the stairs so you can see the entrance to the Guildhall, and so you can actually understand what was the point of making this new building. Because we have seen the previous Guildhall at the top of the High Street, remember, by Queen Anne. So you'll probably be wondering, why did we need a new one? Well, there was a scheme behind it. Thank you so much, Bridget and Mark. It's very kind. So this is the entrance to it, and you can see right there, license in pursuance of an act of parliament for music and dancing. So here was the deal. They thought that if they built a venue rather fancy like this cost a lot of money, guys, to bring London money and potentially even Queen Victoria here, maybe that will have an impact positively in the rest of Winchester as a society and for business. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite pan out like that. Or it did, but only for a short period of time. Let me show you the memorials that we have here on the sides, because I think you will also appreciate them. This is one of the memorials for the War of South Africa in 1899. If we have any of our lovely South Africans in tour, Well, this one is for you. It's a bit strange. You're probably wondering why it was put here, but it's because it was erected by the mayor of Winchester, and this actually used to be his office for a little while. And here we have the two memorials to the actual making of the Guildhall and then to the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. So as you can see, this is one of them, the shiny marble, and then a little bit higher up, when the Guildhall was officially opened in 1873. Now, this is the end of Victorian period. Society had money, but of course, within less than 50 years, a horrible thing is going to happen for the whole world, which is the First World War. Nobody, Winchester, London money or otherwise, had money or time to come here in pursuance for an act of parliament for music and dancing. So as you can see, the idea kind of falls flat on its face very quickly. And as such, this building is now mostly offices, which is a shame because it's a gorgeous building. It has a lovely set of watercolors inside, but you will never be able to see it unless you're actually working there or you are renting the office for, something like that. So again, it's one of those spaces that I really wish the city habilitated for, better enjoyment of our culture and our heritage, because these vaulted ceilings are everything. Thank you so much, Beatrice and Sandy. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I'll give you a better spot for taking a picture of the whole thing from a viewpoint now. And as you can see, we have King Alfred approaching in the horizon. Okay, heads up, getting a picture of King Alfred is quite hard because, as you can see, it's right in the middle of the road. Like I said, I don't know why they decided to create this part of Winchester like this, but honestly, it gives me a headache. And every time I bring tourists here, they are so upset because the picture is so hard to get. Anyway, a very quick view of the Broadway here, very reminiscent of natural. Yeah, it is exactly that, Mandy. I'm glad that you caught the reference. Well, as you can see here, every single little nook and cranny has little miniatures. That is not so normal in traditional Victorian architecture. That's what I mean. This is very medievalist, because what it's trying to do is not just the essence of Gothic. That's why we call it neo-Gothic in Victorian, in the sense of, the shapes and whatnot, but the actual essence. I will actually zoom in so you can see some of those little miniatures, which are scenes from the Bible. The statues are different kings that were important here for the city of Winchester. And of course, the lovely, huge clock tower. At night, this illuminates normally in purple, which is rather beautiful. And it's rather grand. Welcome, Fisa. Thank you so much for joining us. So this is probably the best frame for the clock is here. So I'll give you a couple of moments to snatch that postcard. And then the best one overall for the whole structure is there, right before the cars start appearing on it. Excellent. I've just seen a couple of questions. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, the First World War was very damaging here. Well, in Winchester, it was kind of a blessing in disguise, which is a horrible thing to have to say. But it was thanks to the war that actually a lot of people started relocating here, and Winchester became a town again. So, sometimes these things happen. John's house, by the way, the building you're seeing in front of us is a modern building, but the little hall next to it is actually a medieval hall. This used to be an almshouse. We have lots of almshouses here in Winchester. And in fact, one of the recordings that I'm hoping to do after Easter, when things calm down a little bit, is of St Cross Alms Hospital, which is one of the best preserved medieval almshouses in England. This is the office for the mayor of Winchester. It's not really used as an office anymore, but it was all done in Victorian times again as a way of trying to revitalize this part of the city. Part of it has been repurposed to create public toilets. So, I'm not sure if that was a commentary on the mayor and the mayor's function, or if it was just convenient because it was right next to the bus station. I'm not saying anything. I'm just pointing out how urban planning sometimes goes a bit funny. Who is the statue in the middle of the road? So this is our dearest King Alfred. We're going to try to get right underneath King Alfred, but as you can see, we have a lot of traffic. Now this is the conundrum. Are we gonna fight them or are we gonna join them? I'm gonna actually let them go. I think after these 2 buses, there's not a couple more. No, they were just cars going in the opposite direction. Okay, guys, get your postcard pictures ready. This is the best frame for King Alfred the Great, and there's a bus coming. So I'm gonna zoom in so you can get it neater, and I'm gonna get that awful scaffolding out of the way. Go, 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 go before the bus ruins it. Well, I will try and get underneath him in a moment, but unfortunately the angle is so bad that you will not get a clear shot of Alfred himself. So let me try and frame this better. There we go. And here is our lovely King Alfred. And then when I move out of the road, I will actually tell you a bit more about Alfred the Great himself. Right. Are we happy? Are we happy with Alfie? I'm gonna go to the side so you can see the shield and everything else. But the statue was here. It's been here since 1901, which is the 1,000-year anniversary from the death of Alfred the Great. And Alfred the Great is called the Great because, well, he actually managed to unify the Kingdom of Wessex, which becomes the prototype for the Kingdom of England, and fought the Vikings as well. A lot of people think that the reason why he's called the Great is because of that, because of the military effort. But that's not the case. Alfred was an awful tactician. He did not know how to fight. The Battle of Edington that happens in 878 right outside of the city of Winchester is proof of that. It's literally won by luck more than anything else. And the deal that he establishes with the Northmen, with the Vikings, is purely done on, well, political pressures and on the fact that Guthrum, the Viking leader, actually knew that he had more to get from Alfred if he actually signed the damn contract than anything else. The one who burned the cakes, exactly. Which, by the way, there are no cakes whatsoever. It's all a mythical tale to kind of add more credibility to Alfred's struggle. The cakes is just one of those parts of state making that kind of happen. Right. Well, Alfred the Great really becomes the Great because during the Middle Ages, he creates the burgh system. Burgh is where we get the words borough and burgh in this day and age. And it's essentially a system of settlements that were pretty much sort of fortified to defend themselves, but also where there was a representative of government, meaning a clerk. And this is how King Alfred invents a proper system of bureaucracy here in the UK. Without what Alfred does there in the burgh system, I can guarantee you everything else that happens afterwards would simply not exist. Now, you also notice that he's holding the sword kind of like upside down, as if it was a cross. Well, Alfred originally was not gonna be king. He was the second son, and he was gonna go for a life in a monastery. As such, he was an advocate for peace and spirituality. He wanted to bring people together. But there was another obstacle at that time period in the UK to bring people together. Now, currently, in England alone, I'm not going through the whole of the UK, just England alone, there is almost an accent per county. That means 40 accents. In case you are wondering why British people sound weird, now you know. Well, imagine that back then, every single one, of course, here was the bus. Imagine that every single one of those accents was instead a dialect or a language. He knew that if he allowed that to continue, people would never come under one banner. So he actually worked very hard with a bunch of monks and scribes to standardize English language. That is the only reason why right now I'm even able to talk to you, because he creates all of those little branches of Anglo-Saxon and makes it into one standard that is Old English. And then in Old English, we throw a little bit of Shakespeare and a little bit of 19th century lingo, and bim, bam, boom, here we're all talking in English. It's literally the reason why, without Alfred, that would not be happening. And that is why he is the Great, and why here in Winchester, we are so grateful to him. Right, let me just catch up with the chat quickly. Thank you so much, by the way. Bridget, Mark, Beatrice, Sandy, is very kind of you. Thank you for the tips. Everything is kind of coming a bit jumbled into the chat. I'm very sorry because it's all kind of coming slow. Thank you so much for joining us, MB. Welcome, Nicole. Thank you so much for the tip. Very kind of you. Well, you know what? I never had a problem understanding the Yorkshire accent. I think it's actually quite charming, personally. But, well, there we go. Hi, Roxanne. Thank you so much for joining us. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here.